going to bring in Brent Beecham, friend of the show now. Sir, how you doing? Good morning,
I'm
Brent.
doing good morning.
So, Yemen, we're already in a war, major one. I mean, this is not in the press anywhere. I mean, there's like 800 sorties going on over there. It's incredible.
Yeah, I think it's intentionally been kept quiet. And I think it's been since mid-March. 800 missions have been conducted against Yemen. Also, unheard in the press has been 20 ballistic missiles that the Houthis have fired against Israel at that same time. In fact, there was 3 just this past week, including one hypersonic missile that was fired at northern Israel, which was for the first time conducted. All of those were shot down. So there's this kind of ongoing thing, but it seems to me that the tactic that we've been using is one, hit the ports to take away their financial capability, and the second is to go after their leadership targets. And whether we're hitting them or not, it's not been again discussed in the press. Of course, yesterday or day before, we hit some target, and there was claims that we killed some African migrants. And again, you see the press; they run straight to that. Al Jazeera, Reuters. We've killed African immigrants, and you're like going
like 68. I read, or supposedly at some collection point.
Yeah, and again, probably 100,000 have died crossing the Red Sea trying to get to Saudi Arabia looking for work, but 68 died in an attack. Trying to pressure the U.S. But the U.S. is obviously we're in a position now we haven't been since the end of the Cold War, which we are in fact the lone superpower. China is incapable of influencing anything really globally, I think, right now.
Yeah, you're right, because of their weak economy and with the trade tariffs, which is quite brilliant. The only thing that worries me is we're expending ordnance at a massive rate, and I just don't think we have the industrial capacity to keep this up. Obviously Trump and DOD are aware of this, and you would think they are rapidly trying to fix that issue, but it's a concern, isn't it?
Yeah, of course, it doesn't help that we sent massive amounts of armaments to Ukraine over the last few years. In fact, the base in Israel, Nevatim, which we built when Israel left the Sinai, that was the forward base for all of our weapons supply for the Middle East. That base was emptied out to supply the Ukraine. So that and I think we probably we're expending a fair amount of our ordnance right now, but again, dumb bombs with kits on them probably are pretty easy to produce.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So you brought up Nevatim. I believe you flew out of there, correct?
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of reports of a lot of sorties of U.S. air transport cargo planes coming in there, and whether that's with more armaments or missile defense or whatever. Any thoughts on that at all?
Yeah, like I said, that's the base that when I was there, it was a training base for fighter lead-in. That's what I was doing there, was kind of the fighter lead-in school. And then in the early 2000s, as the war on terror kind of ramped up, it became the base for supply for Afghanistan and Iraq. In fact, when I was flying for Delta at that time, I was flying with a guy who's a reservist, and he said, "Yeah, I came back from Israel, from the secret base," and I go, "Nevatim," and he looked at me like, like, "How did you know that?" And I go, "Well, I lived there for a little while." It was pretty funny, but that's also where we deployed the THAAD missiles as well, and that's where U.S. Forces from Europe, the Air Forces, whether it's Navy or Air Force or Marines, they deploy there during the winter time when the weather's poor in Europe to do exercises. And I did in my reserve duty, I did a lot of liaison work there. So it's a fantastic base, but it was built. I mean, it's one of those bases like what, and in the Gulf War I was in Iran,
Yeah, me
uh,
too. Yeah.
dispersed base, hardened shelters. It was built for, is the perfect war base to be in, and great for, for transports to come in and out. Very long runways. I mean, you
Mhm.
couldn't shut that base down hardly, except with a nuclear weapon, obviously. Or
Yeah, yeah. So, my impression is that, when we were in the Air Force, the sole job, and that's changed now, hopefully changing back, but the sole job was to kill people and break things, right? I mean,
right.
that was the goal, war fighting. Are the gloves off in Yemen? It seems like they might be, you know?
Yeah, I don't think anybody's pulling any punches at this point.
Mhm,
I saw some video just a few days ago about the Houthis are still using suicide drones to go after, Navy ships. I saw
mhm.
one where they got really close to taking out a French destroyer. So I mean, it's a all out. I mean, it's an all out conflict right now. You're not wrong that it may be something that's not, the equivalent of what we saw in, say, World War II with,
Mhm.
suicide, kamikaze, airplanes flying in. But these drones are dangerous. The Houthis, they may be a ragtag bunch of terrorists, but they got teeth.
Yeah,
And they've shot down supposedly a bunch of our MQ
yeah,
nines,
the
and
Reapers, yeah.
yeah, they I saw a rumor something around 20 that they've shot down. So they've got air defenses they've acquired from Iran.
This is a special report.
Knowing how to invest your money is harder than ever before. Dealing with stock market volatility, record debt, and terrorist attacks requires new thinking. At US Asset Management, we can help you see the world more clearly so that you can move beyond the chaos and invest with confidence. Call us, visit us online, or drop by our office. US Asset Management, helping you make better decisions with your money.
Your government doesn't care about you. That's why you need a medical emergency kit. It contains life-saving medications like ivermectin, Z-Pak, and antibiotics. Stock them before they block them.
We heard and we've reported here that Iran has backed off their resupply of Yemen, of the Houthis. The question is that still the case, and are they just running? Are they still just running on the supply that they had previously?
Yeah, yeah, the whole resupply thing is, with the straits of the U.S. Navy right now
Yeah,
also is a big problem that, Trump has to rapidly fix. We'll switch gears to Europe for a minute. I mean, obviously, this is, reversion to, old World War One type tactics. Air superiority seems to have gone by the wayside, am I wrong on that? I mean, I think that, and this is really a near peer effort
right.
fighting our proxy army, which is U.S. mercenaries and everything, run by the U.S. military out of Wiesbaden. So you don't see, and they're trying to get F-16s in there and stuff, and they just maybe don't have the aircraft. But it would be tough to be a fighter guy out there, right? At this point, or an air to ground guy.
So this is kind of the air warfare that we thought we might fight against the Soviets. That air
Hmm.
defenses are very dangerous. The S-400s
Hmm.
took down an F-16 just a few days ago. In I think it was like April 12th. They lost. That was the second F-16 that they've lost. Um, Fighting in that regime is very tough. If you can't take down the air defenses, you are in deep trouble.
Hmm.
So
Very similar to Vietnam, actually, because you had
yeah,
heavy air defenses.
yeah, this is worse
Yeah.
because the S-400 is super capable weapon system. The Ukrainians have not been able to take out their air defenses, and their air defenses sit inside of Russia. And obviously there's been sort of hands off of attacking inside of Russia, and they don't have the same capabilities. They never had the capabilities that we had. or that Israel had. And if you look at what happened in Iran with the attack that the Israelis had, the first thing they did was take out the S-400s that the Iranians had, and then
Do you
they
know if
had
they've
free
been
reign.
replaced? I mean, you don't have access to intel anymore, but do you know if they've been replaced or seen any reports of that in Iran that the Soviet or the Russians have maybe resupplied them?
I don't think they've been able to rebuild,
Mhm.
and I don't. And if they have, it's a matter. Israel, that's their forte. They did the
Mhm.
same thing in the Bekaa Valley in
Mhm.
1982 against the Syrians, and that was the first thing they did when they went into Iran. They'll do it again. They'll use a combination of drones and airplanes, and they'll take them out. So in any future conflict, that'll if that were to occur, that would be the first thing they did. But the Ukrainians are in deep trouble in terms of their air capability, and
Yeah.
the Russians have air. I think they have virtually have air supremacy over the Ukraine. But the it's like you said, it's degraded to World War One. Instead of artillery, it's drones, and instead of howitzers, it's missiles
Yeah.
and rockets. So it's
And
just
trenches.
in trenches. It's
Mhm.
stagnated to the exact same kind of warfare, and it's going nowhere. People are just in the intro, President Trump just saying they're just being cut to pieces on the front. And the difference is in World War One, we didn't see that live. You didn't hear about it until after the war, and you still see the scars in Europe on the ground if you pay
Mhm.
attention. And now we're seeing it live. We're seeing it with people's cameras, cell phone cameras.
Well, we're seeing it on Telegram. We're not seeing it anywhere in the press. I don't think
Yeah,
I've seen a
right.
video of the front on the legacy
Yeah.
media
Well, they
in
don't want to.
years. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't want you to see it because it's counter to the narrative.
No, it is horrific, and I would encourage people to listen to the interview Tucker Carlson had with the U.S. reporter embedded on the Russian side in Donbass.
Right.
Quite,
That was
quite,
interesting. That's the first one I've ever seen.
yeah, yeah.
I saw this morning there was talk of a ceasefire to begin
Mhm.
May 8th, I believe. I God willing, they can stop this because it's going nowhere. There is no end to this conflict. It will end exactly in the same place it started, in the trenches, and
Yeah.
they're just going to chew up people by the thousands every day.
The destruction, I mean, the horror and the pain these people are going through is the families in Ukraine is
Yeah,
just and Russia is
yeah,
off the charts. I mean, there's no reason for this. It's
no,
just except if you wanted to have a war and depopulate the country and gain access
yeah,
to resources and the whole thing. So it's pretty horrific.
yeah.
Anything else, Brent, before we let you go?
No, other than I would say it's not about whether Putin's evil or not evil.
Mhm.
It is not the point. This war has no, and you and I are old cold warriors,
Mhm.
and it's easy to fall into that trap of the Russians are bad and
Yeah.
the West is good, and that is not the point of this, of trying to end this conflict.
I completely agree. Well said. We'll see you next time, Brent. Thank you for short notice
Appreciate
coming
it.
on.